Hello, I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Now, I know I'm a little late to the party, this happened last month, but I think it's worth talking about. And that, my friends, is one of the most underrated games in the Halo franchise, ODST. ODST turned 10 years old last month. It came out in 2009, in late September 2009. I have many fond memories of playing it back when I was in high school, and trying to get Vidmaster achievements and desperately trying to get Recon in Halo 3. So I figured it was worth paying homage to a game that really doesn't get the respect it deserves. So Halo 3 ODST was different from anything that came before it in the franchise. It was a bold departure from what was before and what came after. Halos 1, 2, and 3 were all very linear, action-based first-person shooters. Now, they thrived on their vehicle combat and their weapon variety, but generally, they were fairly straightforward. ODST diverged from that formula and went open world. It went from being an action game to almost a noir mystery horror game with bits of action segments thrown in. Its story is remarkable, and I hope to cover it more in the coming weeks as we approach October 20th, which is a significant date in the Halo universe. And I'll do another video on that coming up. So what made ODST different? Well, if you've played it, it's pretty obvious. Unlike Halo games before it, ODST wasn't this big space opera taking you to Halo rings and distant worlds. ODST takes place entirely in the span of about 24 hours. Starting with the orbital drop on New Mombasa, which happened during the events of Halo 2, and ending shortly after dawn the next morning. You play as the Rookie, a silent protagonist and a new member of a squad of ODSTs. ODSTs are elite orbital drop shock troopers, which is what ODST stands for. Not quite as elite as the Spartans you've been playing in the past, and that comes across significantly in gameplay. You are weaker, you take far less damage, and the enemies pose far more of a threat. They brought back health packs to bring back the feeling of suspense and add a long-term factor of tension to the game. You spend much of the game exploring the ruins of New Mombasa at night, being punctuated by story missions that are much closer to what you're used to as a Halo game, but still very distinct and different, mainly because of an entire rethought health system and some new weapons. Having to deal with enemies that are more powerful than what you're used to, and more capable, not because they're stronger, but because you're weaker, adds an entire another dimension to a game that in general has you playing as this unstoppable super soldier. The open world gives an opportunity for them to hide things like audio logs that you could spend hours hunting through the streets to try to find. The open world also gave us a playground to explore, something worth looking into and worth digging around in to try to find all its little secrets, all its little hidden nuggets of story. And that brings me to the story. It focuses on one of the most interesting moments in the Human Covenant War, right at the very end, during the Battle of Earth. Humanity is still reeling from the shock of the Covenant finding their homeworld. As you rummage through the abandoned ruins of New Mombasa, you find snippets of the panic that engulfed the streets when the Covenant arrived. As you journey through the streets, you're finding remnants of the battles that your squad mates fought earlier in the day. Battles that play out much more like what we're used to from Halo. Large numbers of allies facing large numbers of enemies, with vehicles and linear progression. And then, when you're done with those missions, you're cast back into the dark, rainy streets of the abandoned ruins of New Mombasa, full of enemies stalking you. It adds an element of horror on top of what you're used to. Instead, you can't run into squads of enemies. You have to make decisions about whether you're going to engage or try to sneak by them. But back to the story. As you search through the streets, you discover your entire squad was scattered around the city in a drop that went horribly wrong when a Covenant carrier jumped into slip space over the city, wreaking havoc on its metropolitan area. As you stalk the streets, you find out that there was a mass exodus out of the city trying to flee the Covenant attack. The audio logs give you snippets into what it's like on a human world besieged by the Covenant. As you find remnants of the actions of your squad mates earlier in the day, you jump into their shoes and play through their stories, while they try to regroup and make their way out of the city, which is now in ruins and chaos, being invaded by a merciless army of aliens. Eventually, your journey through the streets leads you deep into the bowels of the city, where you find the city's superintendent, a computer system that runs everything from public transit to the garbage trucks. This computer system has been guiding you there the entire night, helping you avoid enemies that are stalking through the streets. When you get there, you find that it's holding data that's crucial to the Covenant. It's holding information on the exact position of the underground portal to the Ark. The game ends as the sun is coming up, with you leading a Covenant engineer turned against its masters out of the city with information crucial to their war effort, information that can save humanity, and ends up leading humanity to the portal that will eventually end the war. It's a fantastic story, told in a beautifully short amount of time. It feels very punctual. It is a very good example of how to do a spin-off. It's not entirely dependent on Master Chief's story. It very tangentially interacts with it. But it's not so distant that people who are used to the stories of the main games would be lost or unable to understand what's going on, or how it relates back to what they've played before. It's a remarkable piece of storytelling and a brave departure from what Bungie had been doing in the past with Halo. I really hope in the future to see more games in the Halo universe that take the approach that ODST did, take the risks that ODST did, and are ultimately willing to roll the dice and try something new and interesting and tell a story that's out there and not what we're used to. And ODST did that, and it did it phenomenally. So, happy 10th birthday to ODST. Really, really awesome game. If you haven't played it, and I hope I didn't spoil too much of the story if you haven't played it, I really recommend it. I think it's backwards compatible on Xbox One. It's definitely in the Master Chief Collection. And there's other things in there too. There's Firefight. I want to do a whole separate video on Firefight and ODST at some point, so I'm going to save that. If you enjoyed what you saw here, you want to see more discussions about science fiction, go down below, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you can get notified every time I upload new videos. Also, like and comment. I try to respond to as many comments as I possibly can. So until next time, I'm Colin, this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive, and I will see you next time.